Hi everyone, this is my 2004 R230 SL500 and my top barely went up the other day, so I suspect I have a leaky cylinder. I checked the fluid and it was really low. About 6 months ago I replaced that hydraulic cylinder right there, the trunk lid lock cylinder, so I suspect the other side is leaking now, and you can check that by just pulling this piece back and then putting your hand underneath the cylinder, and there is plenty of oil underneath that cylinder there, so that's leaking. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to fix that. In order to get this cylinder out, what we're going to need to do is take this trunk cover off. We're going to need to take that centerpiece out, and we're going to need to take this large piece out. In order to do that, we're going to have to put the trunk lid in an assembly position that'll raise this thing, and then we'll need to take the cylinder out, and the lines snake down here and go over to the pump, so we're going to have to remove the bolts on the pump and put it on its side so we can get to the hose connectors there to get those connectors off the pump. So that's the general idea of what we're going to do here. Okay, I taken the trunk floor cover off here already, removed the cargo nets and got rid of all this stuff, and that's what it looks like here. First thing we're going to do is remove this trunk cover here. In the back there are just 4 buttons, snaps that you unsnap. I already unsnapped that one, and that one there, and on both sides there are these push pins that you got to get out and remove those on each side. Next, you want to take these little covers off. These are very hard to get out, and you most likely break them. I broke that side getting it out. Just try to be real careful. Just lift up on it and pull back. This was really easy because I've already taken it out and put it back and didn't put it back in real good. And then do the other side, and then a T10 Torx bit right there, and then take both of those bolts out. Okay, so we've got the 4 snap connectors up there off, the 2 push pin connectors off from each side, the covers off and the bolts out of each of the hinges here, and you should be able to take this thing out now. And that's what it looks like now. Now we'll do the centerpiece next. So to get this centerpiece out, there are these 2 fasteners at the bottom. They are T6, and you remove those. And then this cover, or this plastic piece here, just pull up on it and pull out. And then we should be able to get this centerpiece off. It takes a little finagling, and you can get that out without too much difficulty. Okay, now we're going to need to put the trunk lid in an assembly position so that we can move this arm out of the way so we can get that piece out of there. So we've already removed the trunk cover there, which pushes that switch down, so you need to get something just to push that switch down so that you can partially open the top. You'll just need to open the top until the trunk lid is all the way open. If that doesn't work because of your fluid, obviously you're going to need to add some fluid into the reservoir there so that you can do that. You can't do this manually, but it looked like a pain in the ass to me. I'll put a link in the description to do this manually. Now open the top until the trunk lid comes up in its highest position and before the flaps open. Okay, now that you've got the trunk lid in this position, you can put it in the assembly position. You're going to need your key from your key fob, and we're going to put it in to the lock vertically and move it about 90 degrees clockwise. You stick it in there and then move it about 90 degrees clockwise and then pull the handle. And that raises the trunk lid up into the assembly position according to the WIS. And now we can remove that cover out of there. Okay, to get this big piece out of here, we're going to need to remove that right there. We're going to need to move this. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to take off 3 push pin connectors. There's one back there. There's one in the middle. There's one over here in the back. And this plastic piece, which just comes off. You just move this tab. And you can take that plastic piece off out of there. And we're also going to need to take, where is it? Ooh. Right there, we're going to need to take that off as well to move that a little bit out. This is a T30 bolt right here. When you get that off, you can pull this piece off of here, and then you need to disconnect that connector right there. Well, once you've got the push pins out and that piece off and the other plugs, you should be able to work this thing out. Just be careful with this piece down here. All right, there it is. Okay, now you're ready to take the cylinder out. I'm not taking the whole assembly out. I'm just taking the cylinder out there. And to do that, you need to get to this bolt and that bolt here. It's a T30. In order to get this bolt out, you need to push this down so that you can get that bolt out right about there. And then take that T30 bolt out and that one as well. Okay, now that you got those 2 T30 bolts out, you can just slide this thing out of here. When putting the cylinder back, just note the orientation of this clevis here. You see that there is threads on this side, and you can spin it around and there's no threads on this side, so it needs to go back in with the threads on this side, this way. Now we're going to need to cut all these tie straps that go down over to the pump here. When you get to these troughs, these pull right up. They're just snapped closed. So fortunately, you don't have to remove them. Just snap them up. Ugh. Over here too. And there's some more. I've got all the tie straps cut now and all these trough covers lifted. So now we want to put the pump on its side. So you want to take off all 4 of these 10mm bolts in the corners and remove this electrical connector here. And to relieve the pressure, that's a hex socket right there. I'm not sure what size it is. It's right in front of this relay here. And then you just want to turn it about 2 turns counterclockwise. Okay, so there's 1, 2, and then you can turn it back and tighten it snug. Not too tight, it's aluminum. And then we're going to turn this on its side. One other thing we need to do before we turn this pump on its side, we need to remove that push pin there, and then we can peel back this piece here, and we need to remove that bracket there. That's a 10mm socket, and we need to remove that so we can relieve the tension on these hydraulic lines so that we can put it on its side a little easier. Okay, now that's off. Now we can move this thing much better. The lines here are numbered. They're numbered 34. I don't know if you can read that very well. Or 94 and 34. I can't get the camera to focus on that, but it's 34 and 94. So that snakes all the way over here to the pump, and we put it on its side. And then 94 and 34 we're going to have to find here. No, that's not 94, but I'll have to find where 94 and 34 are. I don't believe they're in this group here. They're in this group, unfortunately, which is a little harder to get to. Okay, there's 94 there, and 34 is there. There's 34 there. So the pump on its side here, I'm going to have to cut this tie strap and remove these 4 bolts right here. They're hex bolts, and there's 4 of them. So to get underneath this one here, I'm going to have to cut that tie strap so I can swing those lines so I can get to the bolt. So I need to do that next here. Okay, I've got all 4 of these bolts off, these hex bolts. Now I should be able to slide this plate over, and now I can pull out any of these lines. So 94 is right there, so I'm going to wiggle this out. And I may need 2 hands to do this. Okay, I've got 94 and 34 out, and I took it from that hole there, and if you don't remember where they're at, it's marked 94 there, and the other one I'm sure is marked too. I just can't see it through all the hoses here, but that's out, so we can just take the hoses out and get the cylinder out. Okay, there it is. Here's the cylinder out of the car. Here's my cylinder out of the car. I did try to repair this thing. I bought a seal from a German website to replace the bad seal. I drilled a hole in the side here to get that little clip out of there, and that went pretty well. But the seal has to go on this end here. You can't put it on the other side of the rod here. There's a plunger there that the seal will not fit over. It has to go on this side of the rod. And to do that, you got to get this clevis off. And this clevis is on there pretty darn well. You need some machine tools to get it off. There's a post on NB World that shows you how to get this off. It looks like a lot of work to get that thing off. I don't have the tools for one, and so I couldn't do it. So I bought a used one off eBay for $55 and put that in, and it worked pretty good. It'll leak eventually, but it's good for now. You can send these off to Top Hydraulics or Cabriolet Hydraulics here in Florida, and to get that repaired. You can drive the car with this out of the car. There's a way to manually close the trunk lid, and I'll leave a description in the I'll leave a link in the description of how you can do that manually, and then you can drive the car. Okay, thanks for watching.